Hello, everyone, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict. So glad to be here with you guys. So, what we're going to be talking about today is what's taking place in Pakistan. It looks like Pakistan is being thrown into a political chaos. So, I'm going to try to decipher some or provide you just a brief analysis, if I may, and share some information with you regarding the big picture, as we always say. But before I jump into this, I want to let you know we're going to be having a live stream on YouTube this coming Friday. So make sure you join us for that. As Ross and I, we're going to be there together, and we'll answer some of your questions and so forth. So make sure to join us on Friday, and I will post a note for you guys within a day or two as to what we're going to be covering, and we'll go from there. Second thing is regarding the questions from last video I did regarding India. And I concurred with almost literally 80% to 90%. I won't say 100% because I don't, and I don't lie. I'll say the way it is. It was about 80% it was because the answers aligned exactly where will be the strategic vision for a country to think in terms of where things are headed. So it makes more sense that that India will pivot east, because that's usually where things are headed. And the relationship between India and the US, well, it could maintain some sort of an equilibrium, no more, no less. But the key is, which majority of you mentioned that direction, that it could move east, which I concur with, and I agree with you guys. So. All right, let me jump into what I need to cover today. And also, because there are so many moving parts, I'm going to just limit stuff to 3 key points that I'm going to cover. But I want you to keep in mind that there are other sub elements that, if I may use the term, that you need to think about while we discussing, and we go from there. So here's the first one. The first one is you need to keep in mind that the role of the ISI, the Inner Services Intelligence in Pakistan. Okay. The second thing you have to keep in mind what's taking place in Pakistan in conjunction with what just took place in Kazakhstan with the assassination attempt on the President Tokayev. Yeah, there is no coincidence and stuff like that. Third is of course, Imran Khan's visit to Russia, which was about a month ago. And the last one has to do with the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov's visit to India. So all those are very important elements to keep in mind as I sort of break down the whole idea of where this all came from as far as the turmoil inside Pakistan and who is behind it. And so this is what we're gonna get into, and I will conclude with a brief conclusion and provide you the 2 main questions for today. All right, let's dig in, guys. Let's jump into it. So what just happened in Pakistan? Well, of course, as of last Wednesday, Prime Minister Imran Khan lost the majority in the parliament. Why? Because he had a party that was affiliated with his party. It's called Muttahida Qayomi Movement Pakistan, or MKMP, which was a key partner. This one is considered a key partner of the ruling coalition. That's the one where Imran Khan is. Well, this is about, Pakistan. You just never know how things go. Like in any other country, politically speaking, what it ends up is that MKMP end up joining the opposition. Okay. And it was the opposition that launched the no confidence motion to begin with against the government. And this is what everybody was waiting. It's like, wait a minute, that means that Imran Khan will be sort of overthrown? That's basically what it amounts to. It's a regime change, just in a nicer way, shall we say, with no bloodletting, with no bullet being fired, whatever. Because that's what it is, basically. So what happened yesterday at the Assembly, equivalency of Parliament, is that they had the crucial vote regarding the no confidence motion. And apparently, it's not apparently, it did happen that the Imran Khan's premiership was saved by none other than the National Assembly Deputy Speaker, because he is from the same supporting party of the Prime Minister, who dismissed the do not trust motion altogether. And why is that? His argument was that claiming that it was a foreign interference into the attempt to unseat the Prime Minister. So that is a big problem, politically speaking, when it's politically speaking to the country that's on the receiving end. Why? Because that undermines its sovereignty. So when you have another country interfering in your own domestic issues or problems or politics, whatever you want to call it, that means they are violating your sovereignty, because the sovereignty is not limited only to airspace and borders, and political interference also is form of, if you get involved in another country's political affairs, that's considered a violation of their sovereignty. So, and that is what happened, basically why the no trust vote was dismissed. And in that case, the Prime Minister, Imran Khan, on his advice, he advised the President of Pakistan to dissolve rather, because it's the President that has to do the call. But it was the advice of the Prime Minister. So Imran Khan advised the Pakistani President, Arif Rahman Alvi, his name is Alvi, to dissolve the assembly, basically. And what it means that they're going to have to call in for fresh elections within 90 days. So that is what it means. Basically, when you have something in the middle of a tenureship, of a premiership, that doesn't bode well. It's not a good sign. Because here's the thing you need to know. Given the history of Pakistan, I'm not going to dig deeper into all this. All I need to mention to you is about political aspect when it comes down to something similar to this. If you look at the patterns, historical patterns in Pakistan, you will notice there is a precedence of this. As a matter of fact, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but I did check. To my knowledge, that no prime minister has served the entire 5-year term, because one term is 5 years. None. I'll go as far as Diya al-Haq. Even before him, Bhutto, Benazir. So none of them. So this is again another pattern into this. But where the problem was in this case is that following a meeting that the Imran Khan had with his National Security Council, it's an equivalency to what we have. The US diplomat was summoned only hours after that meeting, which is very problematic. Why would you summon a US diplomat? And the reason being because the one of the top US officials, his name is Donald Liu, L-U, claimed that it will be, I'm going to word it in my own, because just the gist of it, it will be some problems for the PM, the Prime Minister Khan in this case. And why is this? It's because Imran Khan met with the Russian president on February 24th. What was February 24th? It was only the day after Russia decided to order the special military operations in Ukraine. So it becomes a question: is this what this is all about? Because Pakistan decided to sort of exercise its own right regarding its own foreign policy? Could it be because Pakistan doesn't want any other foreign country to interfere in its own policy? foreign policy strategy, whatever that might be. So, but here's the thing: historically, we have to always think in terms of Pakistan's ties with Russia, because they have moved past the tensions that they had during the Cold War. Well, we all know during the Cold War, the hostilities what took place back then, because the relationship between Pakistan and the US at the time has further pushed the country now towards Russia and China. Here is the interesting thing. What I found very interesting. Diplomatically, there is a protocol in usually when a US president wins the election, he will make a phone call to allies and so forth. As of today, and we are April 4th, 2022. As of today, President Biden has not made a phone call to a Prime Minister, Imran Khan of Pakistan. Not because he's Imran Khan. No. It's just that's the protocol. You always call a president of the United States, the sitting president, once he or she wins the elections, will make a phone call to allies, so-called. Well, President Biden has yet to make the customary call to the Prime Minister of Pakistan. So it didn't happen. That was one of the reasons. So the interference becomes one of the key hallmark. And as I said earlier at the beginning, you take into consideration what took place in Kazakhstan, the failed attempt assassination on President Karyov. Then you take into consideration the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov's visit to India. And of course, you take into consideration Imran Khans himself visit to Moscow about a month ago. So you got the idea. You guys are smart enough to know. Why is that important? So now there are two other aspects to all these dynamics that you need to understand and need to know for you to have that big picture, shall we say. Pakistan is a very, very interesting country, shall we say, let alone it's a nuclear power. What I meant by this is the interaction within its political structure, because some common questions that people ask, well, who's in charge in Pakistan? It's a fair question. Yes, there is a prime minister, but do you think the prime minister has the final say? If you want my opinion, I will say no, but this is my opinion. It's no, because you have to consider the role of the ISI, and you have to consider the role of the military. And this is what I'm going to be briefly touching on, because there are certain things that we can talk about here. You know why, and no need to beat the dead horse. Let me just share one thing for you to know. The ISI, the Inner Services Intelligence, it was founded in 1948, I believe, January 1st, 1948. Its budget is classified like many other entities, same what we have here in the United States, like the Central Intelligence Agency. The budget is classified, but the ISI, the reason I know a little bit about it is because I've always took interest into that, and given my past work in Washington, you have to know a little bit about other countries. So you got the point. And I do remember when General Kiani, if there is any Pakistani viewer on watching this video, you will know what I'm talking about. General Kiani used to be the head of the ISI, and certain decisions that Pakistan had to make back then, they had to be cleared by General Kiani at the time. So let's talk about the role of the army and why is that important. Well, of course, in this instance, the army has distanced itself from the political developments of what took place on Sunday, and claiming that it was not involved in anything that pertained or transpired in or outside the assembly. Would you believe this? Would you not? I can decide for you. I'll let you make that decision, but you will only, in my humble opinion, be able to make that decision if you understand the structure of how the government in Pakistan is structured and what the role of the military. So, but here is the thing in this case, and that's the only thing we're talking about in this case. Pakistan Army, basically General Jawaz, the Pakistani Army have snubbed Imran Khan's yesterday statement for his anti-US stand. As you know, or you may know, that Imran Khan was voted in because of his strong stand on against the US. That's what he runs on. That's what people voted for. So the army wants to make it clear that it has nothing to do with what took place in the assembly, but at the same time, it snubbed his meaning Imran Khan's statement, anti-US stand. And the military moved on to say, yeah, we had no role in the dismissal of the no trust vote against the prime minister. Well, here is the interesting thing. Interestingly, is that Pakistani Army General, Chief General Kanar Javed Bajwa declaration came only a day after he snubbed Imran Khan's US stand. Basically, General Bajwa wanted to ensure that the relationship stays on a good terms between Pakistan and the United States. Because you all know what happened about 9 months ago, or even shorter than that, when the United States withdrew from Afghanistan. The United States requested from Pakistan to use some of its territory for drones, and Imran Khan said no. So this is why it's very, very important to put things within the context that will provide you a clear understanding as to why certain things take certain directions, because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. Just about a month and a half ago or so, I was reading up on what's going on with the Pakistani ISI and all that. It's part of what I do. I read up on what's going on, and I have to. So, and things were fine. About a month and a half ago, things were fine. It was only till February 24, when Imran Khan made the trip to Moscow, that things changed. Also, would you find it just coincidence that it was a blast, a car bombing in Pakistan, in a hotel, one of the sort of 5-star hotels or whatever? Interestingly enough, is that there are certain high delegations from around the world. Usually, that's where they stay. Once again, is this just a coincidence, or is it part of a much bigger picture? And this is what I'm trying to get you guys to start to always think in terms of the big picture. Don't look at only on one angle and this is it. No, there has to be some other pieces. I personally will literally put what took place in Pakistan and the assassination attempt on the Kazakhstan's president on the same path. It is no coincidence. No. But let me talk briefly about what happened a year ago regarding the ISI and the military, the army for that case. In that case, rather. So this way you will have a much bigger picture as to exactly what's going on. So a year ago, relations between Imran Khan and the army chief was very strained. Why is that? Because Imran Khan blocked the appointments of the new ISI chief. And what was at the issue of this? At issue was the appointments of Lieutenant General Nadeem Ahmed Anjum. Usually, ISI chief is always a 3-star general. Okay, that's usually how it works. What's interestingly is that the Constitution of Pakistan gives the Prime Minister the right to appoint ISI chief in consultation with the army. So basically, the Imran Khan cannot just make the decision on his own. And this begs the question, if he can't make the decision on his own, who's in charge? That's just how it works in that country. So at that time, which was a year ago, remember, this has been evolving over time. Things have settled. The government, the Pakistani government, is not coming forward and saying anything. It's staying mum about it because the issue has been resolved. It just, there are always that tension still in the background. So at that time, General Bajwa told Imran Khan that the PM should not interfere into the affairs of military matters. That is a bold statement, in my opinion. And the reason being, because General Bajwa wanted to retain at that time, because before last year, I think the decision was made in either April 2021 or February 2021, somewhere around that time. At that time, Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid was still the ISI chief. So, and that's exactly what General Bajwa wanted the status quo to stay as is. In other words, he wanted to keep or retain Lieutenant General Faiz Hamid as ISI chief. I know there are so many names here, whatever. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. Now, here's the thing. And by the way, just fast forward to today. Lieutenant General Hamid is now the commander of the Peshawar. He's the Peshawar Corps commander. It is an interesting and important post. Usually this post, it's regarded as a move to make himself eligible for the next ISI post. That's usually how it works. It's very... You have to understand the military structure of Pakistan to understand those kind of dynamics. Why the ISI has a say into political affairs in Pakistan. Why the prime minister cannot, and I'll use the term, cannot cross ISI. So basically for us in the United States, whom we deal with, well, we deal with the ISI. Rarely we deal with the prime minister's office once in a while. So. And here is another thing that you need to understand about the ISI structure within the military structure as a whole in Pakistan. ISI chief, doesn't matter who, which usually comes from a military background because there's always a three-star general. So ISI chief tends to be closer to the army, whose favors are prerequisites to get appointed to the post. You got the idea why General Bajwa wanted to insist on Lieutenant General Hamid staying in post and opposed the appointment of Lieutenant General Anjum. Well, as of today, Lieutenant General Anjum is the ISI chief, or the DG, as they call them, Director General. Because ISI post, the chief, the position itself, is one of the most crucial in the Pakistani army. So you can just see why the tensions existed. Of course, there were reports back then suggesting that I think that report never made it to the outside world. Why? Because it will show friction that exists within the government in Pakistan, and that's usually not good given its tensions with India. Because anytime, as a rule that I learned over time, anytime there is instability in a government, that's always a bad sign. It's a bad sign. So despite what was taking place in Pakistan inside the government at that time, the government, this kind of information didn't make it outside. So, and basically what it consists of is that at that time, Imran Khan sought the assistance of General Bajwa against the opposition. Except that General Bajwa refused. So the Pakistani Army General Qamar Javed Bajwa's remark on the US may affect the Pakistani-Russia ties, because he wasn't in favor of that. Basically, to him, he argued that the Russian shouldn't conduct military operations in Ukraine. I'm not judging the guy, but I'm saying is, did he understand the security concerns of Russia as a military man? You will be the first one to know, given what's taking place between Pakistan and India. So that's, to me, common sense. The other thing that, the other question that looms large is, how come, and this is just me thinking out loud, how come the turmoil, the political then that is, took place in Pakistan but not in India? Because India took the same stand as Pakistan. They both decided not to sanction Russia. They both said to the United States and the West, no, we are not going to sanction Russia because we're going to maintain our trade with Russia. So the question, which is a logical one to ask, is how come whatever took place in Pakistan happened in Pakistan but not in India? Could this be because, and as I said at the beginning, you have to keep in mind the prime ministers of Russia's visit to India. Could this be, has to do with the visits of Lavrov to Russia and 6 other Western representatives who, because basically last week it was jam-packed, diplomatically speaking, for India. So you got, oh, Stephen, thank you, Stephen, for your super sticker. Appreciate it. It was jam-packed diplomatically because you got Liz Truss, the Foreign Secretary of England. You got Nepal Prime Minister. You got Mexico Foreign Secretary. You got Navalny of Israel. And even Wang Yi of China was there. But what is the most thing that they all share in common? None of them had the audience with Narendra Modi, except Sergei Lavrov. And that, to me personally, it tells me the story right there. Narendra Modi granted an audience for Lavrov, but not UK, Israel, Nepal, Mexico. It tells you the story right there, or China for that matter. So that becomes the question is, how come all of a sudden this political turmoil in Pakistan, fomented by a foreign entity, targeted Pakistan, but it did not target India? It's just some question to think about and to consider, because it's worth asking. And given the possibility of Russia playing a mediator between China and India, will certainly, and I say this with absolute conviction, will certainly shift the geopolitical trajectory to the east, definitely. So it becomes, like I talked about last time, if to India is a strategic decision. It's at a crossroads right now. Do I take this or I take that? I hope India will be wise enough to think, because it got opportunities. Yes, they do have opportunities with the US, but also you got to see where the trends are headed, where the next market will be. So it becomes on India now to decide how it is. So the bottom line is that, could it be that India was spared, but Pakistan was targeted? That's a possibility to all that. So here's my conclusion, guys. Pakistan, just for you to keep this in mind and understand it from a bigger picture, that is, Pakistan was the frontline state in the US Cold War strategy in the South Asia. And we all know why. There are certain things that we can't mention here. You all know why. And after working against the interests of the then USSR, and we all know what was happening next door in Pakistan, because it worked on both sides, working on both ends against the interest of both. This is the United States was working with Pakistan against the interests of both India and Soviet Union back then. The USSR, which is today Russia, of course, have often held Pakistan to a degree. They are not saying it out loud, but they've always held Pakistan responsible for what took place in Afghanistan back then, when the Russians were humiliated. Why? It's because Pakistan played a role in assisting the US with training fighters back then. Because Pakistan has sourced most of its defense equipment from the US before it turned to China. And that becomes very concerning, I believe, as an analyst, very concerning for the United States. I won't care much about Western Europe, because to me, they are irrelevant anyway. So what matters is the United States. And as I always say, guys, there are three countries that matter on the global stage: the United States, China, and Russia. Of course, the dynamics are changing on the global stage. Of course, the new global order is changing. And this is what Pakistan will have to think about. This is what India have to think about. This is what Southeast Asian countries, ASEAN, have to think about. This is what you see now, the problems in Solomon Islands. You see Philippines, even Indonesia decided, no, we're going to be importing oil from Russia. They're going forward. I saw the statements of the Singapore foreign minister or prime minister, or whomever there, Lee, if I'm not mistaken, when he met the speaker of the house. And I could just tell, reading the text of his statements, the guy is not convinced about what Singapore is doing. But that's choice they made. Does it reflect the will of the people? I don't think so. I don't think so. So and this is exactly where Pakistan now is going to find itself, because they're only about 90 days, 3 months from now, and those elections will have to be held again. I don't know. I am leaning towards the Pakistani people. Maybe they'll decide to put Imran Khan back into the office, because now it became evident to them what just happened. And rightly so. I mean, it's their country. They can choose whatever. But also, it's bad because it's exposing, not bad for them, but it's exposing whomever these foreign entities meddling in Pakistan's politics. Because that's just not good. This is where the problem is. So here's my questions for the day. And I have two questions for you. Number one, do you believe Pakistanis will vote Khan back into the office? I answered my opinion. That's mine, but this question for you. Do you believe Pakistanis will vote Imran Khan's back into the office? And the second question is, will Pakistan, like India, stay the course and get closer to Russia and China? I repeat the first question. Do you believe Pakistanis will vote Imran Khan's back into the office? And second question is, will Pakistan, like India, stay the course and get closer to Russia and China? Now, thank you so much. Okay, ZZ, appreciate your super sticker. Thank you so much for your support, guys. So those are just two questions that I thought about and figure out it's worth considering, worth thinking about, worth finding answers to, because it'll give you an indication as to where things are headed. And also, it helps you know one thing. that when it comes down to geopolitics, interests, national interest matters. This is why I believe India took the stand it took. That's why I believe Pakistan took the stand it took. Because that's why ASEAN countries are being neutral so far. Singapore, I put a big question mark on Singapore, but just the way it's after what I read from the statement. So anyway, I hope to see you guys on Friday. Ross and I will be doing a live stream. I hope you can join us there, and we'll answer some of your questions. And in the meantime, I'm gonna keep my eyes open on what's going on. This ISI entity is very, very fascinating. I wish I can talk more about it here and openly, but unfortunately, I can't. So I hope you guys have a great day, evening, whatever part of the world you are in, and look forward to seeing you next time. As always, guys, stay informed. Till next time. Bye-bye.